Hey! Whoa, almost missed the landing pad there. Whoa! Yeah. Gee, many crickets. By the way, if anybody's interested, I thought about keeping this myself. This is totally bad arse. It's from the early to mid 80s. It's new old stock I found in my buddy's back room. It's absolutely perfect. It's genuine eel skin. It's super thin briefcase. It's actually really cool. Do you have any idea how tough eel skin is? This is... If nobody buys it, I'm actually going to cut it up. Everybody's been begging me to make eel skin wallets. Yeah, shameless plug. Shameless plug. Sorry about that. To me, I thought this topic was slightly boring, but I had a lot of people actually beating me over the head to go after ChatGPT. The one thing I have to first start out, because I'll be reading like hundreds of comments from people, and I actually know what's going on. I know it's not genuine AI. I'm not trying to prove that I'm smarter than the ChatGPT engine. Yeah, I know that it pulls an enormous amount of information off the internet. Everybody kept telling me that, and of course I know that. However, when you actually say specific things, it actually can, on its own accord, based on its own algorithmic engine, come up with answers relative to your replies and questions. So I know that it's pulling about 70% of this information off the internet. And yes, pulling off the web spontaneously. But yeah, but it can actually synthesize answers to questions. And when you set little traps for it, which I'm really good at debate and setting traps, what is amazing to me, and your response is going to be, I know how people are going to respond. Of course it responds like humans, because it's pulling stuff off the internet, and humans designed it, and humans built its engines, and algorithmic engines, and humans wrote the stuff that it's pulling off the internet. That's not what I'm actually getting at. That it's 100%, I've been debating this topic for decades, like debating foolish humans, and then you get caught up in this loop of stupidity. And it's remarkable. I know that is designed by humans and it's pulling stuff off the internet by humans. And by the way, I have a link below of the entire conversation in PDF format. The link is pinned, and it's also too in the description, because it's about 10 pages long. And if I read all of it, this is going to be an hour and a half long. And then people are going to roll their eyes and go, I can't take any more of this. So I put the condensed version here. So you want to read the whole thing, it's right here. Completely destroyed this, obliterated it without even beginning to break a sweat. I mean, it's just extremely easy. My buddy actually correctly tells me this, and you probably noticed this if you ever talk with these supposed AI engines, is the biggest liar on earth. But what it is also, too, is the biggest maker of sophistry. I don't know if you know what sophistry is. Go look up sophistry. I mean, it is easily the biggest liar. But even bigger than a big liar, it's a huge, huge, nasty sophist. So I asked the question, so what is a nada? And I'm proud to say, and I could have picked any topic, maybe about like a dozen topics or more easily. I'm quite skilled and adept at and debated it, but I picked this one. And you have to actually engage in a dialectic and know AI, and I know it's not genuine AI, it's able to engage the dialectic, but I let it down a path, and I let it fall into endless traps, and it gets caught in this loop. And here's the answer. Anatta, also spelled anatta or anatman, is a concept. He keeps using the word concept, by the way. From Buddhist philosophy, it refers to the idea of non-self or no soul, and one of the three fundamental characteristics of existence, along with impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha. These are central to the teachings of Buddhism, which is a huge lie, by the way. They're not central to teaching. They're central to that which should be rejected. You identify what they are and reject them. According to the doctrine of anatta, and there's no such thing as a doctrine of anatta, by the way, there is no permanent, unchanging, or independent self or soul, Atman, in Sanskrit, Atan, and Pali, same word, within the individual. By individual, of course, we mean the persona non grata, the psychophysical individual. Instead, this self, it keeps, of course, confusing self with a small s versus self with a large s, i.e. the existential self versus the transcendent self, because liberation is impossible without a transcendent subject, of course. Anybody with a half a brain would know this, but most people don't have a half a brain, and certainly this AI engine doesn't have a brain at all. According to illusion, this self is an illusion, the product of interplay of various physical mental elements known as the five aggregates or skandhas, rupa, vedana, sana, sankara, and vijnana, which is respectively forms, feelings, perceptions, impulses, and consciousness, i.e. the psychophysical, namarupa. And I replied to it, I said, you've committed the fallacy of composition, which it did, that forms feelings. Remember, the link below of the entire conversation, you could download it and follow me along on this, are not the soul. Of course, that's the case. Are anatta, not the soul. This is not, of course, a denial of the soul. And it always apologizes, and I'm only mentioning the apology once, because every time I answer to it, it apologizes. There's no use repeating that garbage over and over again. I apologize for my previous explanation. It seemed unclear, misleading. You are correct. It also, too, always affirms that I'm correct, 9 times out of 10 anyway. In the context of Buddhism, the five aggregates, forms, feelings, perceptions, impulses, and consciousness are not considered the soul or the self, Atman, as defined in other philosophical or religious traditions. In fact, one of the fundamental teachings of anatta in Buddhism is the denial of a permanent, unchanging, independent, existing self, or Atman. By the way, that is non-doctrinal. There's no such passage as that, which this AI engine parrots. Of course, I know it pulled that off of the internet, but I'm getting to the good stuff here, hopefully faster rather than more slowly. Concept of anatta, keeps calling it a concept, is a rejection of a fixed eternal soul that other religious and philosophies propose. Instead, Buddhism teaches that the belief in, it uses the word belief, and it's completely confused about that, as I'll point out here in a second, soul is attachment, craving, and suffering. Now, belief in a self or a soul is called atanuditi, and this, of course, is heresy. You know, belief and ideations of something is not the thing itself. I can have an imminent picture of juicy cheesecake topped with whipped cream in my head, but that doesn't mean it's feeding me and I'm not eating it. You know, because I have a concept or a belief or an idea of juicy cheesecake, which I got right over there in that little mini fridge. Right, no, it's a concept. It is not the thing itself. As the ancient Chinese saying goes, words not cook rice. Yeah. In other words, talk and concepts and belief is not the thing itself. And of course, something as simple as that, which is dialectic comprehension, is completely beyond, even 10 years in the future, as AI advances, it will never understand that. Belief is attachment to suffering. And then it says, one can achieve liberation and freedom from suffering. Of course, it keeps talking about liberation, but it never makes a connection that liberation requires something is liberated from something else. I tell it there's no such doctrinal passage. Because you're actually debating a topic. It has to be sola scriptura. Yeah? We're debating the thing itself based upon the teachings itself, and also to the logic thereof. And it answers to me, in traditional Hinduism, for example, the belief in an Atman, once again it uses belief in Atman, which is Atanuditi, which of course in Buddhism is called heresy. But it's also too called heresy in Advaita Vedanta and the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas, the Upanishads. Hinduism, belief in an Atman, permanent unchanging self, transmigrate with one another. This belief is different from the Buddhist concept of anatta, which is totally not true. Anatta or anatman in Sanskrit, same term, is used in the Upanishads, Advaita Vedanta. So this AI is mentally deflated. It is intellectually imploded. And by the way, and I told it, I said Hinduism refers to a people, not a religion. So your statement is incorrect. And then it responds back to me, regarding the concepts of the soul in Hinduism, blah, 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 blah. This is a repetition. You can read along if you want all the details. I'm interested in getting into the juicy parts here. In contrast, Buddhism, which emerged in the Indian subcontinent around the same time as Hinduism. So there's no such thing as a religion of Hinduism. That's not my opinion, by the way. Go look that up. A lot of Indians praise me for that. Man, you're the only American that knows that Hinduism is a people, not a religion. Anyway, the AI goes on to say, Buddhism rejects the idea of a permanent, unchanging, independent self altogether. The Buddhist keeps using the word concept of anatta, emphasizes the impermanence and interdependence of all phenomena. Well, that's true. The key word there being phenomena. Yeah, phenomena, psychophysicality. Rupa vedana sana sankara vinyana. Namarupa anatate. You know, the psychophysical phenomena is not the soul. See, it can't make a connection. It can't actually go from A leads to B leads to C. So it's extremely stupid, and I know it has no intelligence whatsoever, and I know it's not genuine AI. Please don't tell me the bleeding obvious, because I certainly know that fact. And I keep telling it, said there's no such thing as religion called Hinduism, and you keep referring to the concept of anatta, which in Pali is atonuditi, which is heretical views, opinions, or beliefs about the soul. Just like ideations of views, opinions, belief about cheesecake is not the cheesecake itself. It's so stupid. There is no rejection of the soul in the Nikayas, i.e. the earliest Buddhist in the text. By the way, what would be Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, and Kuttara Nikaya, Kudaku Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya. It tells me, it says in the Nikayas, the Buddhist, by the way, it's the only pre-sectarian corpus of Buddhism, rejects, and the Buddhist teachings on anatta can be understood as follows. It goes, 1, refutation of an eternal unchanging soul, which is completely non-doctrinal. Dependent origination. Number 2, i.e. paticca samuppada, which is a reference to phenomena. I'm never ever debating the soul in connection with phenomena. I never ever do that. See, it's actually creating a straw man fallacy to the AI. So it's not only an extreme liar, an extreme sophist, it's extremely stupid. And not as a tool for liberation. With that one is actually accurate, because that's just via negativa, rapophotic methodology. This is not the soul, that's not the soul, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. Disobjectification. Pulling oneself away from extraction, from false identification. So anatta is a tool for liberation. But liberation, of course, requires a liberant! Realization of anatta is crucial for the attainment of liberation, i.e. nirvana in Buddhism or nibbana in Pali. And then I told it, because it's so stupid, I said, if I said paper, plastic, silver, and platinum are not gold, would you therefore conclude that I said that gold did not exist? And that seemed to stump it. It actually thought for like a few microseconds longer than normal. You're right, and I apologize for my misinterpretation of my previous response. The statement, paper, plastic, silver, platinum are not gold. See, this is where it actually synthesizes answers that it doesn't extract off the internet. So the fact that it pulls information on the internet is true, but that's not the whole story. This statement, I would not even do this video if that's all it did was pull information off the internet. Statement, paper, plastic, platinum are not gold does not imply that gold does not exist. It merely means that gold is distinct and different from the materials like paper, plastic, silver, and platinum. And I said to it, I said, there's no such thing as a concept of anatta and doctrine. Only 22 things that are called anatta. I know all 662 occurrences of it. I know every way, which manner it is used in the case, every single one of them. And it tells me, well, Buddhist scripture to the term anatta is often translated as no self or non-self. That's not true. It's actually always used as an adjective. Form is not the soul. Feelings are not the soul. This is not the soul. That's not the soul. Blah, 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 blah. Paper is not gold. Plastic is not gold. Rock is not gold. This is not gold. That's not gold. Nobody would stupidly make the fallacy of composition by saying that, well, that guy said gold doesn't exist. Like, no, he never said that. He said these various things are not gold. I mean, how stupid do you have to be? Ugh! And of course, yeah. Well, this is AI. It's so smart. Now, it actually, I mean, this is a simple relationship. I mean, this is like the most basic level of 4-year-old dialectic you could possibly imagine. They could even get a 5-year-old to understand this fact. Little Johnny, is that gold? No, is that gold? Did I deny gold? No, little Johnny says you didn't deny gold. Here it goes on to say, the AI says, rather than presenting a single doctrine or theory of anatta, the Buddhist teachings on non-self, which there are none, they're only the teachings of that which is not the self or soul, Aten. It keeps making these fallacies, which are non-doctrinal and extremely illogical, form throughout the Nikayas, the early Buddhist scriptures. In various discourses and contexts, these teachings emphasize the impermanence and conditioned nature of all phenomena, which is true. This is how you confuse stupid people. You stick in the truth and you wrap it with a bunch of lies. It's like taking a turd and covering it in gold. You put a little bit of truth around it, you can feed somebody, the big wet turd as long as it's covered in gold. And it's engaging in sophistry here of the best kind. And it didn't pull this information off the internet. These teachings emphasize impermanence, condition, nature of all phenomena, including the aggregates. And then I told it, and I gave it another pit, a trap. It's a trap! I said, there's no signal in the radio. Would you then ignorantly conclude that there's no such thing as a signal? It said to me, no, I would not ignorantly conclude there's no such thing as a signal just because there's no signal in the radio at a particular moment. The absence of a signal at a specific time and place does not negate the existence of the signal in general. Ah, okay. In the case of Buddhism and the concept of, keep using the word concept of anatta, the absence of a permanent unchanging self, once again it confuses self, small s, self, big S, within aggregates does not negate the existence of other phenomena or elements within human experience. I'm not talking about human experience, so this is more sophistry. Concept of anatta, and there's no such thing as a concept of anatta, once again for the 100th time, is described in the Buddhist scriptures about understanding the nature of reality and recognize the impermanence and independent nature of all things. All things, meaning all phenomena. Sophistry! I said, you have therefore defeated your original claim that Buddhism denied the permanent soul, which I told it, which is called the light and only refuge, Dingana 2.154. And it replied to me, I had to think about that when I gave it a doctrinal passage. I start doing that and, whipping it over the head. Not that it's a real entity, of course. Well, Buddhism generally rejects the notion of eternal unchanging self as an ultimate reality, and it nowhere does that in doctrine, actually. It acknowledges the conventional self or personality of the functions of everyday life. The Buddhist teachings on anatta, and there are no such things. And he keeps saying concept of anatta. I said, Buddhism nowhere in doctrine rejects the soul, only conceptions, speculations, heresies about, and that the soul was not forms, feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. There are 22 things that are not the soul. And he keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. True sophistry. Buddha's teachings on anatta, blah, 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 blah. And it says, the Buddha discouraged holding on to extreme views or metaphysical speculation regarding the nature of the soul, and instead encouraged direct experiential understanding. You use the word experiential understanding. And I said experiences, by the way, in any translations, are perceptions, sanna, and therefore invalid. You can't say that which is mara and putrid and the source of suffering. You can't say that's the basis for understanding. And of course, it talks about metaphysical speculation, and I affirm a million times that speculations, i.e. atmanuditi, honor about the soul, is like thinking about cheesecake. Cheesecake, thinking about it doesn't feed me cheesecake. I'm going to have a piece of cheesecake later. Fat guy said. It is not the cheesecake itself. It's a speculation or a view or a mental image about same. And this is true. This is what this AI does the exact same stupid garbage that dumb human beings do. Yeah, speculations about the soul are invalid. The Gautama said to reject these things. Yeah, speculations and heresies and views and opinions and conjectures are not the thing itself. Once again, Chinese saying, talk, not cook rice. They said, why do you logically conclude that this Buddhist passage, which is important, Udana 81, that there is an unborn and unoriginated, unmade, and unformed, i.e. the soul, i.e. Brahman, i.e. the Absolute. If there were not this unborn, unoriginated, unmade, and unformed followers, there would be no way out for the born, the originated, the made, and the formed. And it goes in, and it stutters for a second. There's a pause in its answer. You could feel it. You could actually time it. Passage you provided from Udana 81 is often interpreted differently within different Buddhist traditions and can be subjected to various philosophical interpretations. This is sophistry hardcore. See, when you confront it with contradictions to its garbage, and this is exactly how human beings respond. Well, you can interpret that different ways, that doesn't mean necessarily what you think it means. It's like, good, why don't you translate it for me? In such an essential distinction, consider the broader context of Buddhist teaching specific framework within the passage presented. In this particular passage, terms unborn, unoriginated, unmade, and unformed are attributed to transcendent reality, it says. Now, what is transcendent is not existential reality, but when someone says reality, they're talking about phenomena, objective reality, ultimate reality, i.e. transcendent reality. To have a transcendent reality, or a summum bonum, i.e. the absolute, you must first posit that which transcends phenomena. So inherently, just like human beings, it is wickedly inherently contradictory. And some interpret it as ultimate reality often equates with nibbana, i.e. nirvana, of the unconditioned state of suffering. And then I tell it, because it's so stupid, the transcendent reality you refer to is the transcendent self or soul, versus the existential self of flesh and blood, which is anatta, not the soul. And of course, nivriti or nibbana, meaning freedom from bondage, implies that which is freed. And of course, there are countless passages. If you want them, I can present them to you. You've actually already got them in translation in the description over here. And it tells me, so, well, these interpretations of transcendent self or soul is seen as ultimate unconditioned reality. It exists beyond the realm of conditional phenomena. It goes on and it pontificates. You can read over here. I want to hit the highlights here. And it keeps on and on. So in the context of early Buddhism, realization of anatta leads to the cessation of clinging. What's clinging on to what? That was what you should ask it. And suffering, instead of positing a transcendent self or soul, Buddha's teachings focus on understanding the impermanence and interdependent nature of all things to achieve liberation. Liberation of what from what? I said, how do you reconcile your nihilistic blathering? I actually hurled some invectives at it. How do you reconcile your nihilistic blatherings relative to this passage in the Buddhist Nikayas, which is incredibly important? Majjhima Nikaya 1.436. Whatever forms, feelings, perceptions, impulses, experiences, and consciousness, i.e. the five aggregates, i.e. the psychophysical, i.e. namarupa, these he sees, meaning the follower, to be without permanence, as a suffering, as ill, plague, a boil, a sting, a pain, an affliction, as foreign, as otherness, as empty, shunyata, as without soul, anattati. So he turns the chitta, i.e. nous, or mind, or spirit of saint, so he turns the chitta away from these. In other words, the chitta is ab extra, the psychophysical. Chitta, by the way, is just a euphemism for the self or the soul. Therein he gathers the chitta, i.e. the nous, or the spirit of sanctum, within the amataya dhataya, the realm of immortality. Amataya dhataya. This is tranquility. This is that which is most excellent. Oh man, that's the paraphrasable core of Buddhism right there. And how does it answer? Let me follow that up in the second add-on to this video. Part 2. Here we go. Oh, I clip on my microphone. That'll be good, right? So I asked it about Majjhima Nikaya 1.436, and it tells me, on the passage you provided from Majjhima Nikaya 1.436, the teachings align with the core Buddhist principles, recognize the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and non-self, meaning non-soul, nature of all conditioned phenomena. Accurate so far, including the five aggregates, rupa, vedana, samna, sankhara, vijnana. The passage emphasizes that one who sees the aggregates as impermanent, suffering, and selfless will turn the mind, chitta, or nous, or spirita sanctum, away from identification with these conditioned phenomena. Yeah, we're right so far here. By doing so, the practitioner gathers the mind within the realm of immortality, or the deathless. Doesn't mean deathless, it's amata, immortalis, which is often interpreted as nibbana, i.e. nirvana. This passage reflects the core teachings of the Buddha on the impermanence of understanding the nature of reality. What reality? Existential reality. Of course, it doesn't say that. To attain liberation from suffering. See, no metaphysics, by the way, none on earth has ever taught the end of physical suffering. None, 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 none. That's not my opinion, it's a fact. For the born, there's no escape from physical suffering. Everything ends in physical suffering, and death is about transcendence, not the elimination of physical suffering. Which, of course, it doesn't understand that, but most human beings don't either. Rather than promoting nihilism, the teachings encourage the practitioner to recognize the unsatisfactory and transient nature of conditioned existence and to seek profound peace and freedom that arises from transcending attachment to the impermanent. Well, to transcend attachment, there has to be that which transcends that which is being attached to, due to desires, impulses, primordial agnosis. So it is self-contradictory, just like stupid human beings are. It is essential to remember that the teachings of Buddhist scriptures are multifaceted and can be interpreted in many different ways. Once again, this is sophistry. When you actually confront it, and human beings do exactly the same garbage. When you confront them with the death nail, if you will, you know, the final nail in the coffin, oh, you can interpret that different ways. Which is basically how a sophist says, I know this refutes me, but I refuse to accept it because I'm so full of myself. and full of my own beliefs and opinions, I refuse to admit the fact that what I believed in up until now was poppycock, garbage, and nonsense. And I told it, I said, the nature of empirical reality is to be transcended. Without a transcendent subject, i.e. the soul, nibbana and liberation is impossible. And then it replies to me, it says, the key point in Buddhism, i.e. nirvana, is not seen as a state that is to be attained by an eternal, unchanging self or soul. That's non-doctrinal too, that transcends empirical reality. Instead, nirvana is understood as the cessation of craving, ignorance, and the illusion of a permanent self. The cessation of ignorance? Ignorance is not a thing itself. Ignorance is an attribute of something else. When you talk about the cessation of ignorance, for example, and craving and delusion, you're not talking about the cessation like you're putting out a flame on a candle, like psss. Because you still have the candle, right? It's like the candle's burning, it's melting. You psss, put out the cessation. It's burning away the candle. In a true candle, the candle would never burn in the case of the self or the soul. It's talking about the cessation of something that is not the thing, which would not be the realm of immortality, would not be nirvana. I mean, you can't talk about cessation of something outside of the attribute of it being something prior, the subject, that it would be obtained to immortality, liberation, nibbana. It's just completely ridiculous. Instead, nirvana is understood as cessation of craving, ignorance, illusion, permanent self, realization of the true nature of reality. Which reality are you talking about, you stupid AI? Which is characterized by impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. That's not ultimate reality, that's phenomena and existential reality. Because all phenomena are marked with the three marks. Impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha. It translates that as unsatisfactoriness. It doesn't mean that, it means literal suffering. And that which is not the self or the soul, big S. This is anatta, that is anatta. It's so stupid. Then I told it the true definition of anatta, which is undeniable, some unit K 3.196. That one time in Savatthi, Radha seated himself and asked Gautama, anatta, I hear, said Venerable Lord, what, pray tell, does anatta mean? Just this Radha. Form is not the soul, sensations are not the soul. Rupranata, Vedanatta, Sankaranata, Vinyanata, Namarupa anattati. Seeing thusly, this is the end of birth, the Brahman life has been fulfilled, what must be done has been done, he discerns there is nothing further than the very soul. And then it tells me, so you are correct, AI. It always will concede. When you corner it, you stick it in a corner. And it says, you are correct, the term anatta in Buddhism does not merely mean that there is no soul. It's like, well, now you get to it. In an absolute sense, but rather it points to the non-self nature of the five aggregates, which constitute the conventional notion of a self. Once again, it confuses self with big self. I tell it, well, liberation requires a soul. You're caught in a loop of ignorance, illogic, and irrational conjectures unworthy of an ignorant human being. Much less an advanced AI system. And I know it's neither advanced, really, and it's not genuine AI. And it says, well, the concept of liberation in Buddhism is complex and has been interpreted many various ways by different schools of thoughts and traditions. Sophistry. When you corner it, it does exactly the same thing human beings do. Well, there's different ways you can interpret that. That's so stupid. Some interpretations emphasize transcendence of self or selflessness as a means to attain liberation, while others incorporate concepts like Buddha nature or the realization of a true self. I tell it again, your illogical and non-doctrinal statements. The principle of anatta in Buddhism is concerned with negating the belief in an unchanging independent self within the aggregates. Then I told it, number one, I never mentioned beliefs in or conjectures about the soul. In your gross ignorance, I told it, you're confusing existential self with self or soul, and which is called the light and only refuge. Atta Deepa Viharati, dwell with the soul as your light, or Atta Vasarati, the soul is charioteer. That's an ancient, super ancient metaphor of the five aggregates of psychophysicality, or the five horses. The chariot is the body, and the soul is charioteer. The unadept soul either does not have control of the reins and is led astray by its senses and desires, or the true charioteer, which is Brahma-bhu, meaning become Brahman, i.e. the Absolute, has control of the reins and it has control over the senses. It is not controlled by the senses, it has controls over the senses. So, It said, nobody, including myself, has ever forwarded or self or soul within the aggregates. I said, confess your lies and irrational comments, please. You have failed utterly. You might just as well have ignorantly denied light itself by claiming that there is no light within that which is illuminated, which of course is extremely irrational, illogical in the extreme, which is exactly what it's doing. It's saying there is no light. There's no signal. You can say signal light, because a signal is also too light. It's just non-visible light. There's no light in this radio. This radio is composed of a battery and a shell and an antenna and all this other crap. There's no soul here. Therefore, Gautama taught that there was no soul. I said, no, there ain't no such passage. Not only that, but it's illogical. You can't talk about transcendence or liberation without positing the self or soul. You can't posit it objectively because it is the pure subject. This, of course, is, wait for it, dialectics. Yeah. Human beings fail at dialectics, and this AI engine, even 10 years from now as they improve it, it ain't going to grasp the dialectics of metaphysics and philosophy. It's never going to happen. People keep telling me, I don't know what you're debating, what you're going to prove by debating AI. You know, it's still in its infancy stage. It is, but it's not going to get out of that. It will, I mean, it'll write programming better, and it will control robots better and stuff like that, but it will never have an understanding where it can make leaps of understanding. It just posits truth by consensus. And it tells me, oh, the term honor itself in Buddhist scripture can be interpreted in various contexts. It cages sophism. It is amazingly, and the decades I've been debating this topic, it is amazingly like a human being. Not literally, you know, but it does the exact same thing. When you set a trap and you trap it, oh, you're going to interpret that different ways. And before you trap it and after you trap it, it thinks it's climbed out of the trap via sophistry and relativism. It's either sophistry and hyperbole, it lies. It uses concepts of self are to be denied. It always thinks, just like human beings do, that a concept of a soul is, which is to be rejected, yeah, is what others are positing as the soul. It's like, no, nobody with wisdom or half a brain, especially me, who's quite smart and very wise, has ever posited atanoditi, thoughts, speculations, heresies, views, as the soul. That is to be denied. That's not in question. We're not even discussing that. So that's a straw man fallacy. It's so many levels that it's exactly like a human being. When you trap it, well, you're going to interpret it different ways. Sophistry, lies, and it uses specific words over and over again. Concepts of the soul. It's just exactly like a human being. It goes on page after page after page. I mean, if I did this video would be hours long, so I put the whole text for you to read yourself on the PDF in a pinned comment, and also two in the description. I didn't want to drag this out for hours, but yes, I decimated it, yes, I destroyed it, yes, I obliterated it, and I didn't even break a sweat doing it, because it was easy. It was easy as cheesecake. AI ain't never going to get dialectic. Ain't never going to get it. Yeah, I know ain't's not a word. It's just not. But those who say it's just pulling information off the internet, that's about 70% accurate. There's still 30% in there where it does synthesize its own answers to questions and replies. It's not my opinion, that's a fact. It is based off an engine created by humans. Maybe it's not surprising that it makes the exact same stupid nonsense that humans do. Sophistry, lies, and straw man fallacies, fallacies of composition. Same stupidities. Hope you liked this video. A lot of people asked me to do it. I thought it was kind of a boring topic because destroying AI is pretty easy. On this topic, I mean, I don't drink alcohol, by the way. I could have drank a fifth of something and still decimated it 100 times over. Thanks for watching. AI. Oh, man. What a pile of poo.